Hi, everybody. We're going to quickly go through chapter 16 in your book, all about legal controls in the mass media. This was the class period today where the noon class really got into it and the 1:30 class did not. My 9 o'clock, however, were rock stars. Okay, here we go. You need to know about John Milton and the self-writing principle. We talked about this in class, that it's a very idealistic idea that truth always comes out. That might be true, but we are in such an information glut. We have so much information to sift through that it's very difficult to determine what information is valid, true, and meaningful. We have a free press, which means that the government typically does not get involved in our news media, but we can talk about that more later. Almost 3/4 of the world do not have a free press. And so here's a map. The green countries are countries where the government does not interfere. Yellow is mainly the authoritarian model. Purple is intense government involvement in the flow of information. And if you look at those purple countries, there's a lot of population you're talking about there. All right, so chapter 16 talks about the 4 different models of expression when it comes to government involvement in the news. Authoritarian, communist, libertarian, social responsibility. You need to know what each of those are. We talked about them in class today, and you need to know which one we are. Okay, so know about the authoritarian model, the communist model, and which countries practice those, the libertarian model, and the social responsibility model. You need to remember that in our media world, our news media is supposed to function as an unofficial branch of the government. It's actually called the fourth estate, meaning that it's supposed to keep watch on the other 3 branches. But remember, in class, we talked about how that really is very difficult for the media to do, because media and politicians need each other, right? But they don't necessarily like each other. And if you're a reporter, you don't want to get a politician upset, because then that limits your access. And access is more important than anything else when you're a reporter. So it's a very strange dynamic relationship that reporters have with politicians. Can the government censor what we see in the news? Yes, yes, yes. Absolutely they can. I showed you the pictures from Hurricane Katrina that CNN sued in order to show. You need to know what prior restraint means, that the government can sue to have something censored before it's published. That's how you remember it. Before publication, prior restraint. There's 2 prior restraint cases you need to know. First one is about the H-bomb in Progressive Magazine, and the second is about the Pentagon papers in the New York Times. You need to know what the judge decided in each of those cases. Also in class today, we talked about how the First Amendment kind of battles the Sixth Amendment when it comes to media in the courtroom. Is it okay for cameras to be in a courtroom? How does that change the scenario? Which is more important, for you to have a fair trial or for a reporter to be able to record that trial for posterity and reporting purposes? Here are all the things, not all the things, but some of the things that are not covered by the First Amendment. Copyright infringement, which we have all been guilty of. Libel and slander, invasion of privacy, and obscenity. You want to make sure you know the difference between libel and slander, which one is spoken, which one is published. You want to make sure that you know that libel and slander are both lies. As long as you always tell the truth, that is your number 1 defense against a libel suit or a slander suit, right? Does libel and slander occur in a courtroom? You bet, but attorneys have absolute privilege and reporters have qualified privilege, meaning that they cannot be sued for libel or slander for anything that happens inside a courtroom. You want to make sure you know the difference between pornography and obscenity. Oh, I spelled pornography wrong. Pornography and obscenity, you want to make sure you know which one is legal, which one is not, and under which conditions. Okay. Safe harbor is the term for the time period in which broadcast channels can air material that is somewhat indecent. And remember, in class, I threw a little bit of a rant because it referred to safe harbor as 10 to 6, but they forget that the central time zone, it's 9 to 5. So 9 p.m. for broadcast networks is when indecent stuff can be shown. That's why a lot of the juicier shows are on after 9 o'clock. Now remember, cable channels do not have to adhere to this because they do not use the airwaves. They're under a different set of rules altogether. We talked about the Fairness Doctrine in class today. What is it? Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? Is it still in effect? No. What are some complications with the reinstatement of the Fairness Doctrine, like some would like to see? You also want to make sure you know these terms about copyright. public domain. What does public domain mean? And when are things in the public domain? In class today, we also talked about the voluntary movie ratings. It is not a law that ratings need to be applied to movies. The movie industry does that voluntarily. All right. It's interesting that a lot of movies that are PG now, I think, would have been rated R 20 years ago, that the pendulum has really swung in different directions. But one thing you need to remember about the movie ratings, besides the fact that they're voluntary, is that they assume that everyone ages and matures at the same rate. And we know that that isn't necessarily true. So make sure that you're familiar with the terms from chapter 16 for exam number 4, okay? I just went through it so fast. Welcome to my kitchen. Okay, see you, everybody.